To Jens Stoltenberg, who's currently addressing the media.
Chosen, planned, and is waging against a peaceful country. We call on President Putin to stop this war immediately. Withdraw all his forces from Ukraine without conditions and engage in genuine diplomacy now. NATO allies have stepped up support for Ukraine, helping to uphold the country's right of self-defense as enshrined in the UN Charter. Today, ministers addressed our immediate response to the crisis and the longer-term implications for Euro-Atlantic security. We have already strengthened our deterrence and defence, on land, in the air and at sea. Allies from North America and Europe have sent thousands more troops to the eastern part of the alliance. We are deploying the NATO response force for the first time, and we have over 130 jets at high alert and over 200 ships from the high north to the Mediterranean. We will continue to do what it takes to protect and defend every inch of NATO territory. NATO is a defensive alliance. Our core task is to keep our 30 nations safe. We are not part of this conflict, and we have a responsibility to ensure it does not escalate and spread beyond Ukraine, because that would be even more devastating and more dangerous, with even more human suffering. NATO is not seeking a war with Russia. The Kremlin's ambition is to recreate a sphere of influence. Other countries the right to choose their own path. So ministers discussed the need to support partners who may be at risk, including Georgia and Bosnia-Herzegovina. Russia's aggression has created a new normal for our security, where fundamental principles are contested through the use of force, and we face the threat of conflict for years to come. There is much at stake: how we organize relations between states, whether democracy or authoritarianism prevails, and ultimately what sort of world we want to live in. Ministers agreed that NATO's relationship with Russia has fundamentally changed for the long term, but we remain committed to keeping channels for diplomacy and deconfliction open, to avoid any unintended escalation, misunderstanding or miscalculation. There is one lesson we can already draw from this crisis. To keep our nations safe, we need North America and Europe standing together in NATO in strategic solidarity. At this dangerous moment, no country and no continent can go it alone. Putin has failed to divide us. NATO is more united, more determined and stronger than ever. We're also working closer with like-minded partners. Today we were joined by the European Union as well as Finland and Sweden. In response to Russia's aggression, we have decided to strengthen our coordination and information sharing with Finland and Sweden. Both countries are now taking part in all NATO consultations about the crisis. And this afternoon, I will join a meeting of EU foreign ministers to address the crisis and our response. And with that, I'm ready to take your questions.
Okay, we'll go to BBC, the back.
Thank you. I'm James Landell, BBC. Can you tell us a little bit more about what sort of options were considered about helping countries like Georgia and Bosnia? Secondly, can you tell us a little bit more about whether NATO allies discussed what more military support could be provided for Ukraine? And thirdly, was the issue of no-fly zones even discussed at this morning's meetings? Thank you.
NATO has provided support, and NATO allies have provided support to Georgia, to Bosnia and Herzegovina and other partners for many years. We helped them with capacity building, reforms, strengthening their defense and security institutions. We also have a training center in Georgia. We also have common exercises. And of course we have different kinds of activities with different countries, different partners. We didn't make any final decisions, but it's a broad agreement that we need to do more to support these countries. And this is partly about scaling up things we already do on strengthening the defense and the security institutions, reforms, training, but also potentially adding more activities in support of these countries. Because what you have seen with Ukraine is that they may be at risk, exposed for even more intervention, subversion, and potentially even attacks by the Russian armed forces or the Russian Federation. NATO allies provide support to Ukraine. I think we have to remember that allies have provided support to Ukraine for many years, and now they are stepping up different types of Ukraine of support, and this is crucial in this critical time for Ukraine.
That, of course, was the NATO Chief Stoltenberg addressing after the recent crisis and the escalation of the crisis. Of course, he clearly said that NATO is primarily a defensive alliance and its focus currently is to keep the member nation state, and they are not part of this conflict. And the biggest goal is that the war should not spread beyond Ukraine. And NATO also said that it is not seeking a war with Russia as of now. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.